In this lesson, we're going to be looking at dividing polynomials. So let's look at division, especially long division. Let's remember the steps. We're going to put what we're dividing by on the outside into 4, 7, 8, 9, 2. Now remember what the steps are. We're going to take this first term, 15, doesn't go into 4, so we have to look at 47 as a whole. How many times does 15 go into 47? Well, that would be 3 times. So we put that here. The next step is to multiply. So 3 times 15 gives me 45. Now, our next step has always been to subtract. So let's make sure we're careful to subtract what we have here. So 47 minus 45 is going to give me a 2, and then we bring down the next term. 15 into 28. Well, that only goes one time. We multiply 15 times 1. We're going to subtract. That's going to give me, what's that, 13? Then bring down the next term. 15 into 139. Well, I know that 15 times 10 is 150. So 15 times 9 is going to be 135. That's perfect. Whoops. And now we subtract. I went ahead and put the subtraction sign, but that's okay. And we subtract, and we get 4. Bring down the next term, we get a 2. 15 into 42. Well, that's going to have to be a 3. No, 3 is 45, so we need a 2 here. 2 times 15 is 30. Our next step is to subtract. And I get 12. Now, there's nothing else to bring down, so this is our remainder. Now, one way to write the remainder is plus 12 over 15. So what was the dividend? Well, that was what was underneath the radical. Underneath the, not radical, underneath the division sign, 4, 7, 8, 9, 2. What's the divisor, what we're dividing by? Quotient is our answer, and 12 was the remainder. Now, how can you always check to see if your division is correct? Well, we could have taken 3192 times 15 and then add 12. It should give us our same thing. Now, the steps when doing long division with polynomials is the same. So let's look at this one. We're going to divide by x minus 2, so it goes on the outside. Going into x cubed minus x squared minus x minus 2. Now, the beauty of polynomials is we don't really have to look at the whole binomial here. All we really need to look at is the first term here and the first term here. X times what would give me x cubed? Well, that's got to be x squared. Now, I like to line them up so that like terms are all in a row. It helps you stay organized. X squared times x gives me x cubed. X squared times negative 2 is going to give me negative 2x squared. Now, here is the tricky part for some people. I need to subtract all of this. Now, one way you can do that is to distribute that. So that would make this a negative x cubed and a positive 2x squared. X cubed minus x cubed is going to give me nothing. Negative x squared plus 2x squared is going to give me a positive x squared. And then we bring down the next term. It's just like long division. X goes into x squared. We need 1x here. Now we multiply. X times x is x squared. X times negative 2 is going to be negative 2x. And then we're going to subtract. Remember, if you're okay with subtraction, you don't actually have to distribute that. X squared minus x squared goes away. Negative 1 minus a negative 2 is going to give me a 1x. And then we bring down the next term. X times what gives me x? Well, that's just going to be a 1. 1 times x minus 2 is going to be x minus 2, and when I subtract, I have 0 for my remainder, which is great. That means it divides evenly into there. That's wonderful. Now, the next one. We have x plus 3 going into x cubed. Uh-oh. I usually have an x squared term next, but I'm missing it. I'm going to put a placeholder because I was missing that term. And remember, we need to line them up like terms. So now we have a place for it. The next one is negative 2x and then plus 12. All right. So again, we look at our first terms. X times what gives me x cubed? That's going to have to be x squared. Multiply. X squared times x is x cubed. X squared times 3 is 3x squared. Now we're going to subtract. X cubed minus x cubed, nothing. 0 minus 3 is going to give me a negative 3x squared. Bring down our next term. Now do you see why it was important to put that missing term there? X times what gives me negative 3x squared? Well, that's going to have to be a negative 3x. Negative 3x times x is negative 3x squared. Negative 3x times 3 is negative 9x. Now we're going to subtract. So here's one of those times where if you have trouble, go ahead and distribute that negative through. Because negative 3 minus a negative 3 goes away. Negative 2 minus a negative 9, when you subtract a negative, it becomes positive. So negative 2 plus 9 would be 7x. Bring down the next term. So x times what gives me 7x? Well, that's a 7. 7 times x is 7x. 7 times 3 is 21. And now we're going to subtract. 7x minus 7x, gone. 12 minus 21, that gives me 9. Oh, a negative 9, right? That's my remainder. Now we write our remainder over what we're dividing by. Now technically I could have put just minus 9 over x plus 3, or you can write it this way. That's fine as well. And that's really all there is to long division.